This episode is brought to you by freedadcourse.com. You are always one conversation away from changing your life, and the power of hello is something that I subscribe to every single day, and I'm always saying hello to new people everywhere I go. Increasing your opportunity, increasing your connection, and getting access to the solutions to the problems that you are facing, whether you're on active duty or just beginning your veteran transition or even transitioning out for 20 years. On the other side of hello are the solutions that you're looking for. Again, head on over to freedadcourse.com. Get your 5-episode audio course to create more connection, create more friendships, and get back to living the life that you're trying to design.
Dory 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home. Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Colloy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Today in the show, I have Kenyon Zitzka. He's a 22-year enlisted Navy veteran. He just retired March 1st and currently lives with his family in Charleston, South Carolina. He is the host of the Zero Xcuses podcast to help men build rock-solid discipline so they can regain control of their time, build wealth, and improve the health and form meaning relationships. Kenyon, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I'm super stoked to be here, and I'm just, like I said, beyond stoked that you've invited me on the show and ready to rock this.
I'm beyond stoked to have you. You're ahead of me on this podcast journey, so I always like talking to legends or future legends in the industry. I want to be like, I know that guy. I knew him before everybody knew him.
Yeah, well, it's gone by really, really fast, and at times I still kind of feel like I'm getting my feet on the floor here in this whole podcasting space, and I love reaching out and helping people along their personal journeys, getting a podcast started, and it goes by fast, and it's been a very humbling journey. I just had my first 1,000 download day, and I'm sure yours will be hopefully will happen a little bit sooner than mine did, but it's a heck of a journey, and I'm glad to see folks like you sharing their messages, their stories, and helping other people with their struggles. So there can't be enough of us stepping up to the plate.
Go ahead and describe what your family looks like right now, and any gaps in intro you want to fill us in on.
Sure. Well, right now I'm about to hit my 10-year anniversary this year with my wife Jamie. We got married August 1st, 2009, and within a few months I got hit up with my first deployment. Right after we got married, but today we've got a 4-year-old daughter, Piper, and we just moved down to Charleston a couple years ago because we actually were trying to get back on active duty. I was reserve when I retired, and we kind of had the itch to be part of the full-time active duty family once again. My wife has always mentioned to me that she kind of wished she met me while I was on active duty, so she can have that military community around her, and something she was after, and that was something that we were hunting after. And I had reached a point in my career where it was a little bit too late in the game for me to for the Navy to bring me back on active duty. They were looking for more mid-career guys to come back on active duty. So I started looking for civilian jobs, working as an engineer for the Navy, and really didn't pan out. Then I kind of stumbled upon this organization called NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They needed a port engineer for one of their ships, which happened to be a former Navy ship stationed at the former Navy base here in Charleston, and my office just happens to be a former senior enlisted hangout spot back in the day. So it was kind of like I was on active duty again, and there's still the Naval Weapons Station and Air Force Base here, so there's still a strong military presence here in the Charleston community. So it was everything we
figured out what I figured out. So you probably noted this, like the GS, the civilian rating system for civilian employees, is the same as the military ranking system, and they get all the same benefits, but 100% less the BS. And I was like, well, that's where I should have been.
Like you really get everything else, except you don't have the commitment. You don't have to be told what to do. You're not held to some military standard. You don't have the UCMJ. You're in that same spot. You get to be surrounded with community, and you get to be a civilian.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still plenty of red tape that you have to go through, and being wise with taxpayer dollars and whatnot. But
yeah, but you don't got to worry about the haircuts. You don't got to be worried about the clean shave every day, or worried about clothing matching.
It's definitely a little bit less, little less strenuous, but it's definitely a good work environment, and a lot of the crew members are former military, and if they're not former military, they have that military like discipline and work ethic. So it's been everything we've wanted and more. I might get set to dive school later this year. They've got plenty of educational opportunities here within NOAA, and we're doing some really cool work, with the ship, doing dives on reefs, doing fisheries research, doing oceanographic mapping. The ship has actually found wrecks of World War II German U-boats off the coast of the Carolinas here. So some really, really unique stuff, and it's cool to be a part of that.
Before we dive into your story, what's the coolest thing that no one knows about NOAA that you can share with us?
Just that NOAA has a corps of about 300 commissioned officers, and not too many people know all 7 branches of uniformed services that the government has. So you've got your Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and you also have the U.S. Public Health Services, which has a similar rank structure as the Navy, and then you also have the NOAA Corps, which is also follows the Navy and Coast Guard rank structure. So it's only officers, but it's 300 uniform wearing commissioned officers that drive the ships and do the fly the NOAA aircraft.
Is it the same contract and like signing up for 4 years or 6 years?
Yes, it's very similar. They don't have, like I said, they don't have enlisted folks. They have wage grade mariners and civilian mariners that man the ships, do all the grunt work, I guess. But the only thing that they don't have is they're not subject to the UCMJ, like you mentioned.
That's another gravy part of it.
Yeah, so they have all the benefits of military service. Just they aren't subject to the UCMJ because they work for the Department of Commerce.
You have to wonder, like, the round tables where these things were invented. You're like, we're going to copy this command structure because we really like how it got. But you know what? They come with a lot of baggage. So we're just going to take the best parts and then we're going to bring it over to NOAA. And then we're only going to bring the officers because maybe the people at the round table had a thing against enlisted people.
Yeah, I don't know. But the the NOAA Corps has its roots. It was the mission that NOAA does was originally a Navy mission, and they spun it off into the U.S. I'm going to butcher this, but the U.S. Coastal and Geodetic Survey Commission or something.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah. So if then NOAA was created, I believe, in 1972, or just they renamed that organization NOAA to better describe its mission. And then they became NOAA Corps at that point. So they do have their roots in naval tradition, but they're kind of their own service nowadays. And NOAA has a fleet of 18 ships that it owns and maintains purely for government purposes. So they man those ships.
How many kids do you have?
1.
How old?
Piper. She's 4.
I like that. So what's the story behind her name? I feel like that has a story behind it.
We were just going back and forth, and the whole, as I'm sure you can imagine, the whole birth of your child, that just seems like a blur. But we were just like, she was born, and she was born via C-section. So my wife and I were in the recovery room, and we're like looking at her. So what's your name? What is your name? And just we both fell in love with the name Piper. I think Orange is the New Black was a popular show at the time, and one of the main characters
that you went into with.
No, we had like Harper, and I forget what the short list was. And Piper wasn't really on the short list, but we wanted something unique, and we always kind of do the the rough and tumble camping and hiking and kind of outdoorsy type stuff. So we wanted to kind of have a name that was kind of rough and tumble. I don't know if Piper was actually that, but like when we thought of that character on Orange is the New Black, that name kind of resonated with us, and we're like, Piper, and we both looked at each other, nodded our heads, and rest is history, as they say.
We have a similar oddity with our first child. So maybe like 2 weeks before, because it's stressful trying to pick that first name.
Oh yeah.
And we picked Zoe. We're like, it's finally over. And then my sister decided to organize an intervention and calls me up and says, you can't name your child Zoe. She's going to be in an interview one day and no one's going to take her serious because Zoe is just this childhood name that adults couldn't have. And so at that point it was cursed. We couldn't do it. So then we went into we were like, we don't really know, but we went into the hospital with Zoe and Brooklyn, or not Zoe and Brooklyn, Brooklyn and Sophia. I was more on the Brooklyn side. I didn't realize it, but my wife's doctor was on the Sophia side, and we also had a C-section, and she pulls her out and says, "Oh, she looks like a Sophia." And at that moment I was doomed. It was over. She was Sophia.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I got the middle name, Sophia Grace. I went with Grace for the middle name, but
yeah, we went with Avery. I forget I can't recall the story of that. We were just like, well, our last name is Zitzka, so we're like, we gotta balance this out somehow, I guess. So Avery, I don't know. It just rang, Piper Avery. So
nice.
Made sense to us.
So let's dive in. When you hear the words "come home," what do those mean to you?
It means more than just physically being present, like being like physically present in the home. You have to be mentally and even spiritually present as well. I'm far from perfect at this by all means. It's something I struggle with to this day, but I think I'm I've made a lot of progress in this area. But it doesn't matter how tough your day was at work, how tough things were, whether you're still in the military or working a 9-to-5 civilian job, when you walk through that, the threshold of your door, your kids are gonna be excited to see you, and your wife needs you to be there to take care of business around the house, because she's probably had a tough day too. Mm-hmm. So it's taking that strategic pause before, when you put your vehicle in park, maybe take a few minutes to compose yourself. Even on the way home, maybe listen to something motivating to get your mind right for walking through the door. Because whether your kids might be crying on the floor and things are a mess, and you got to be that that steady hand that comes in and calms the situation. Or even if they're excited that you're home and want to go out and play, you have to have that energy left over. You can't come home with your tank on E every single day and mm-hmm. expect to walk through the door, go in the fridge, crack open a beer, and sit on the couch the rest of the night.
Did you always crush coming home, or was there a time where you were the opposite of coming home, where you're maybe the traditional service member where they focus on their service and don't necessarily recognize to play a role in the family yet?
I've always been fairly mindful of this. And when I was on active duty, I met my wife after I left full-time active duty. And when I was deployed overseas. So there was that space and that distance. And, but it was never, I'm trying to pick the right words here, but when I first got married, it was a lot easier because it was just me and my wife. Mm-hmm. But now that, and this is why I retired at 22 years versus going to 30, it definitely adds to the complexity of the situation once you bring a child into the situation. And I did struggle with that at first, because I was working long hours. I was miserable in my job, and I felt like I was just kind of going through the motions every single day. And it's kind of what drove me to start looking back into active duty, because it was more of a familiar situation that I could go back to, and I knew how to handle those types of stresses, and I knew how to conduct myself in the confines of a military setting. And that was one of the things that I struggled with leaving active duty and enjoying the civilian workforce was carrying that discipline forward that I learned in the military and applying that to my relationships at home, my civilian roles at my 9-to-5 jobs, and everywhere else outside the military. So that's kind of where I really recognized that I needed to do some work and start to build systems and habits and routines into my day so that I can take care of myself. Because one of the things that I think one of the mistakes I made is I put my wife and my daughter ahead of my own well-being, and I was really burning myself out because I wasn't taking care of myself first. And I think that's where a lot of new dads and new parents struggle, is they feel like they have to prioritize the child. And don't get me wrong, that child is a huge priority. But if you aren't showing up to the table with a good mindset, full of energy, and taking care of your health and your body and everything else, you can't fully show up to help other people. And I was getting that completely wrong. I gained a lot of weight, and I just was not. I was burned out every day. I would come through the door and almost dread walking through the door, not because I didn't want to see my family or anything, just because I was wore out. I knew that there was still hours to go in my day. Because having a newborn, sometimes they don't necessarily let you get full night's sleep, and you want to get that full night's sleep some nights because you got to wake back up and do it all over again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you hit on a lot of points there. The one that I had to learn in my own marriage was that recognizing that your kids are going to betray you. It's a guaranteed certainty. And to make sure that your wife is prioritized over your kids isn't what something is naturally ingrained in our society. I feel like a lot of people are living vicariously through their kids, so they prioritize that way, or they're also just thinking that that's where they need to be. But then they realize that they're living with a stranger when the kids leave, and they've just stopped investing. And I think that's what happens a lot in the military, is where the family does do that. They either focus on the service and the kids, and they don't focus on themselves, and then either the service ends or their kids move out and they don't have anything to work off of anymore. And the other part I think that you said there was, and I've really struggled with this, is as much as you want your family to be successful, you can't be responsible for their happiness. That comes with your wife, your kids. Like, you have to be happy all on your own, and you have to let everybody else be happy all on their own. And you can't carry that burden with you of making sure everybody is happy. It's just going to burn you out. I have tried so many different ways to try to prove myself wrong in that theory, and it's never worked out. That I need to choose to be happy myself, independently, model that. You can support the people in your life, your wife, your kids, but recognizing that you are responsible for your happiness and they're responsible for their own happiness. Like, no matter what they're going through, what life has them, you being gone, depression, mental health issues, doesn't matter. They can only come home on their own, and vice versa, taking the mission to the other side, that you need to be happy on your own. At the same time, you need to help create the environment for everybody to feel safe, but it's not 100% our job to outsource and make sure that everybody's happy in our life, because we'll just get exhausted and we'll end up burning it out and we'll not actually know why.
Yeah, absolutely. And you describe all this, and what's coming to mind is we all need to have a vision for ourselves and a mission for ourselves once we take the uniform off, whether that's like I did recently, or if you're planning on taking the uniform off soon. It's important to have that vision. And I kind of fell into the trap of checking those boxes that society tells us we ought to be checking, like having that mortgage and the house and the white picket fence and stuff, and thinking that, hey, if I just get the next thing, then I'll be happy. You really have to.
Joneses, they just keep going. They just keep going as fast as anybody can keep up, and it's so true that keeping up with the Joneses is no way to live your life. Yeah,
and you know what? If you want to live like a caveman, going fishing and grabbing a fish out of the stream and shove it in your mouth and that's the way you want to live, then, that's the way you ought to live your life. Don't let someone else dictate to you what your ideal life should be. And you need to have a clear picture of that before you can form one with another partner, whether that's a wife or a boyfriend, girlfriend, what have you, or a business relationship. You need to have a vision for where you want to go, a mission, so to speak. And once you're clear on that, then I think you'll have a solid foundation to start to build your own happiness. And that's where it starts.
In episode 16, and I spoke with a active duty Army guy, Kirby Ingalls, and he talks about having a vision board for the family to all see and all buy into of where they want to go, and to making sure that that story aligns with their actions, their words, how they live their life, what they choose to bring into their life. Because reminding yourself constantly where you want to go is a good way to make sure you get where you want to go.
Yeah. In 99% of the population, I don't know if that's an accurate statistic, but I see the vast majority of people just going through the motions.
It can feel like 99%.
Yeah. It definitely feels like 99%. But the other factor is that when you start to do things that only 99% of people actually dream of, you're going to be regarded as one of the outcasts, one of the weirdos, so to speak, doing a lot of things that the majority of society tends to not do. And like vision boards or having a vision is one of those things. So you need to start thinking outside the box of, like, if you start embarking on this journey to fulfill your vision, you're going to get a lot of weird looks. You're going to get a lot of feedback or criticism. You're going to get a lot of, family members saying you shouldn't do that. You should sit down at the table, be a good boy, get a regular 9-to-5 job. And, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's what society will tend to pressure you into doing.
And you have to be careful, because the people closest to you are going to want to keep you safest, especially parents. Yes. That the one thing your parents want is the one thing that's going to keep you having a mediocre life.
Absolutely.
When we were getting out of debt, the Dave Ramsey phrase, live like no one else so that later you can live like no one else. Like, that was something constantly on my mind, that right now I'm going to live like no one else. And so later I'm going to live like no one else. There's a quote that I often think about, even at the gym or different things. It says, today I'm going to do things that others won't. So tomorrow I can do things that others can't.
Yep. And another one of the quotes that I like is, if you do difficult things, life will be easy. If you try to do easy things, life will be difficult.
I like that one as well. Talks about the resistance and leaning into the resistance to grow yourself.
Absolutely. And the other thing about having a vision and a mission for yourself is that once you decide that, yes, this is it, you'll start finding those pieces. You can't help but start to find those pieces of the puzzle. I like the way that I like to describe this to people is share a story about me buying my first brand new car. I actually bought it while I was on my last deployment aboard ship. They'd bring the exchange car sales reps.
The 18's car salesman.
Yeah. I bought a 2003 Mustang GT, bright blue. So it wasn't ready for me right when I got back. So it was still being built and getting shipped to me. But once I got back, I started seeing everybody who was driving a bright blue Ford Mustang GT at the time. I couldn't help but see everybody, like, that's what everybody was driving. I was like, man, everybody bought the same car I did. But that's the affinity bias at work. Once you start set your sights on something and set your sights on a vision, you can't help but see those opportunities. You can't help but find those pieces of the puzzle, and it starts coming together. It's just like when I wanted to get back on active duty, I found, like, it didn't exactly work out the way I wanted to, but it came pretty damn close. Like, I found those opportunities. So that's the other thing, that having a vision, that having a solid vision, like a vision, so you have a solid foundation. That's why it's so important.
I love that. Where do you describe your own vision?
Well, how much time we got? No, in a nutshell,
What's the abridged version?
The abridged version is that I have multiple streams of passive income that support me and my family's lifestyle, which includes being location independent, that I am able to influence and help other people achieve their dreams and goals, which is why I started my podcast. That's one of the biggest things that I've loved about my 22 years in the Navy is I helped other people go places in their careers, advise them, mentored them, gave them hard skills and whatnot. And that's what I want to help people do outside the military as well. And some of the other activities that I want to be able to do is, go on being in location independent. Well, at least during the summer times when school's out, we can just pack ourselves into an RV or travel trailer and just go on a road trip for a couple months at a time. And, still being able to provide value, still being able to influence and help people get their goals. And that's the beauty of being in the day and age that we are, the internet age, being able to, you and I are having a conversation right now. You're in Wisconsin, I'm in South Carolina. We can, as long as I have an internet connection, which is pretty easy to find these days, can go travel anywhere and everywhere. And that's my dream, is just to have as many life experiences as possible and share that with my wife and my daughter. And, I think the more that you get out of your comfort zone, not necessarily being tied down by having that mortgage, that house that you have to take care of, and
$500 car payment for the car that you really don't need.
Yeah, exactly.
People trade a lot of happiness for a $500 car payment.
Oh, I know. And what it boils down to is shifting your mindset from trading time for money and trading money for time, and having time to do what you want and live life on your terms. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my that's kind of like the abridged version of my vision for myself. I definitely want to get back into auto racing too. We did, my brother and I did that back in the early 2000s while I was still on active duty. Would love to get back into it. My daughter, you talk about living a little vicariously through their kids. I think I'm doing that a little bit with my daughter, because we've taken her to some races, and I bought her some kids racing.
That's just making sure
books.
She follows in your footsteps.
Yeah.
It's just an insurance policy.
But she's already told me she wants a pink and purple number 18 quarter midget. So that's another piece of the puzzle, getting my daughter a little quarter midget to get her started in racing this year, maybe next year.
So that's a good lead into the next question. What are some simple ways that you connect with your kids? I'm a firm believer that kids spell love Time. What are the simplest things that you've done with your daughter that she remembers that you're like, really? That's what you remember?
Oh man. That's an interesting question. Something I really haven't, thought of, but I really think that just finding ways to share your life with your kids. And what I mean by that is, there's nothing that stops me from bringing my daughter to work with me, really. As long as I'm not in a super industrial setting, I can bring her aboard the ship. And I think her being able to experience walking the deck plates of a ocean going vessel, and she's also I've embarked on the ship during our last at the end of our last field season. I rode the ship back from Key West to Charleston here, and my wife and daughter met me on the pier. Well, I didn't get to experience a proper homecoming while I was on deployment, because I was single, stationed in Hawaii or Virginia Beach. Actually, my brother was there last time I came back on my last float. But anyways, I really didn't have a huge homecoming. So that was kind of seeing her jumping up and down on the pier while my ship was approaching the pier was a big memory I have, and I'm sure is going to be a big memory for her, because she's asking me about the ship. Even at 4 years old, like, Daddy, how's the ship? How are the diesel engines? Having that memory, my dad brought me on the museum ship ships that were in Buffalo, New York. When I was growing up, we spent time on those. In Boy Scouts, we camped aboard the ships, and I had that memory growing up, and she's going to have a very similar memory growing up. And those are some of the fondest things that I remember about my childhood. And I'm just grateful that I have the chance to also do that for Piper and my wife, because she, her sister was in the Navy and got to experience a little bit of that. But her being involved with that, I think is good for us as a family.
I like that. And the part that as dads we often get hung up on is you just think you need to overcomplicate it. But in reality, like my kid's favorite thing to do is go to the library and to go mall walking, which is just going to the mall before the stores open and walking inside and riding the rides in the middle. Like, oh yeah, that is literally the number one thing. If I ask them what to do, that's what they're going to want to do is, can we go mall walking?
Yeah. And the other thing that she loves is, I was lucky to find a CrossFit gym here locally that does like a fit family day. And I've been bringing her since last year. She was 3 at the time. And, it was a little bit intimidating for her at first, but once she got involved with some other kids, she's doing burpees and jumping on a rower, and, she's not like crushing like 20 burpees at once, but she's like getting into, like, she's seeing me exercise, and it's getting that foundation of fitness and health started at a very early age. That's another thing that she loves to do is like, Daddy, can we go to the big gym today? It's like, no, we can only go on Saturdays, and she's wanting to go pretty regularly. So I can't wait for her to get older, and I'm sure that might be something that we do together, and as she gets older, something we can do on a regular basis together.
We've started doing push-ups in the evening, just in the living room, just like 5 push-ups, and we all lay down on the floor and we all do them. And like, that's something they're looking forward to now. And I have no idea what that little thing's going to do to them later on in life, but it's not going to be negative. But I'm just like, I wonder how much like actually getting excited about push-ups, because I hated push-ups. And the Marine Corps even reinforced how much I hated push-ups. And the idea that I'm doing now with my kid to get them excited about something like push-ups, I have no idea what that's going to do, but I'm interested to watch and see where it goes.
Yeah, when we do push-ups, she jumps on my back. So.
My youngest did that. She was excuse of, I can't do them. But she's only 2. But now she's been moving into doing them on her own now. But
yeah, it's fun. Yep.
What do you want your daughter to say about you when she's at a bar talking to her friends? What do you think that she'll say about you?
My dad can kick your dad's ass. No. Seriously, just that. Man, there's so much that I probably would like her to say, but if I can narrow it down to one thing, it'll be that I can talk to my dad about anything. Like that I don't judge her for the choices that she's made in her life, and that that I'm a safe space for her to express how she's feeling. I'm approachable for advice, and whether she does the most off the wall thing, it's okay for me to tell Dad, like, hey, this is what I did. It wasn't the best decision, but I'm comfortable telling you about it because I know you're going to help me in the end. So that's what I want her to. I think at the end of the day, that'll cover a lot of things there.
This question is born out of a friend that I was at a dad's event, and he says, I've learned to measure the things that happen in my kid's life by what's going to really freaking matter when they're at a bar talking with their friends. Mm-hmm. Like, if it's not on that scale of like, is this really going to affect how they think of me when they're at a bar with their friends talking about me, then it's not really that big of a deal. But then also consciously making sure that you are thinking about like, what are those things that you want her to think about? So then you can constantly invest in those areas.
Yes.
To ensure that outcome does come true. Absolutely.
And, kids, they're going to grow into their own, they're going to be their own person at the, once everything's said and done. And I want her to understand that she's free to be who she truly wants to be, and that I will love her unconditionally. She doesn't have like I can buy her a go-kart this year and her not be interested in doing that anymore, and that's okay. Like, it's okay for you to not be interested in the same things I'm interested in. It's okay for you to have your own interests, your own dreams, and that's what I want ultimately for you. Like, you don't have to, become interested in racing just because I am interested in racing. If you become disinterested in that and you want to, ride ponies or become a ballet dancer or whatever you want to be that person. And it's okay for you to change your mind too.
I've often think about that question and connect it to, or I tell myself to, like, I want my daughter to know that she's beautiful and enough. And like what other people think about her doesn't reflect how she has to think about herself.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's bad now. And I can only imagine when my daughter's 7. So when she's old enough to have those issues, like, it's going to be a completely different world. I can only imagine what world at the pace we're moving now, but like, just knowing that you're beautiful and enough and your opinion of yourself is the one that matters the most.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have your critics no matter what. So you might as well have critics being yourself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this day and age, you can find as many people to give you positive feedback as you can negative. And it doesn't matter who you are. You're going to find those people no matter what. So just be yourself.
So I was talking to a listener this morning, Jake, and he had a question about work-life balance being on active duty. His wife just completed her master's, and she's looking to he has 2 kids, looking to branch out and start going back to work. But he's currently struggling with the balance of dealing with active duty requirements and being away, but then also balancing the ambitions of his wife and just being present with his family. What advice would you send out to Jake when he's struggling with that balance between service, family, and his wife?
My wife and I, we kind of went through a similar situation back when I first was deployed, and I was finishing up school at the time, and I did not have I was deployed for 14 months to Djibouti, Africa. Oof, and I was finishing my master's degree online while I was deployed there. And I didn't have a steady job to come back to when I got done with my deployment. So the roles were a little bit reversed. However, my wife wanted to be the stay-at-home mom and take care of the kids in the house and whatnot. So that's what our vision for our marriage was from the get-go. So it just got to a point where she was like, I'm ready to make this change. And we didn't have a certain future, but what was certain was our vision for what we wanted. And we talked about that before we got married. And we're like, you know what, if your heart isn't in teaching anymore, then there should be no money should not be the reason why you continue to do this. So I basically made the decision at that point, if I can't find a way, I'll make a way to make our vision a reality. And we didn't go through this complicated vision process at that time. I'm kind of using that to describe things at the time. However, we just decided that you only live life once. And if this is what you want, decide to make it happen. You have to move before you're necessarily ready. And I didn't have that job lined up at that particular point in time. But it eventually happened. We were okay. We made it through that time, and it was a struggle. I was on unemployment for a little bit, and then I finally found a part-time job while I finished my studies, and which manifested into a great full-time job. So it kind of works out. Just have confidence that whatever you and your wife's dream is, it will work out, and it may be very, very uncomfortable. Just decide that. For the good of the family unit, that however you need to make things work, decide to make it work. And that vision for yourself, you'll start to find those opportunities to make that dream a reality.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of bring it back to Jake's situation, you just need to make the decision that you're going to, that your wife's career is important to her, and that your chain of command wants your family to be happy and wants to support you having kind of a worry-free environment for your family to excel in your career,
mm-hmm.
for your wife to have a career, and to use your chain of command also to say, hey, you know what, this is what's going on with my life. I mean, we use the term intrusive leadership in the military for a reason, and use that to your advantage. Your chain of command wants to help you, wants your family to be happy so that you can deploy with
stability.
And so there's tons of resources that the military has. Just communicate with your chain of command, up and down the chain of command, to get the resources in place for you to make your family's dream a reality. There's also, I'm not sure of Jake's, what age his kids are. If they're in school or whatnot.
On Facebook, they look like maybe 6 and 4.
Yeah. So there's a whole community. Where's Jake stationed at?
His wife is in Florida, and he's currently in at some educational place where he's stationed away from him right now.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's the whole military community as well. I mean, there's, reach out to, I'll call them shipmates because that's the term we used in the Navy. Reach out to your shipmates who can help. Break problems down into, and resource out the solutions, like who can help. What resources can I bring to the table? And, it might seem like a complicated problem to have, but break it down into its most simplest forms and tackle it one bite at a time. So that's the advice I would offer Jake. I hope all that makes sense, because
it does, and
my brain tends to go a million miles an hour.
Mine does too as well. There's 2 other things I think that would add in there is aligning expectations between your spouse and you and your spouse of where
mm-hmm.
you expect each other to be to support each other successfully moving forward. And then also expectations or what you need from your chain of command. But then what we suck at most is probably the best advice is just keep talking about what you're feeling and what mm-hmm. you're going through with other people in your chain of command, your friends, because there are people out there that have walked this exact same problem, and you're going to continue to get different pieces of the puzzle to help you put your puzzle together. And I think best thing for this situation where it does feel stressful, it's not all on you. It's not on you to hold in what you're feeling. And it's important to keep talking about that with people around you, even in active duty. I know that's the opposite of what they tell you, to keep talking about it, what you're feeling, but letting your chain of command know, because Kirby reminded me of this on episode 16, that your chain of command is just like you said, they're there to support you being successful. You don't always have that feeling probably when you're going to work, but that is ultimately that to win in war, they need to have a successful family. That's why I'm not sure what the number is, but there's a reason why they spend millions and millions of dollars on family services, because they know that creates stability for the war machine that they're getting training to deploy with. So just being open, talking about it, and aligning those expectations are probably, well, you said, just continue to reach out there for resources, because they are out there.
Yeah, and Jake probably did the number one thing that we all should be doing is just ask questions and ask for help. And that's the one thing that we, especially as men, we suck at sometimes is asking for help and recognizing that, hey, you know what, I can't do this all on my own. So he's miles ahead of a lot of us probably, because he's already asked for the help.
What do you want the legacy of the Zitzka family to be?
To put this concisely, I would want my name to be associated with someone who can be relied upon as someone who can help no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the biggest things that I've, like I said before, enjoyed about being in the military is helping other people succeed and just adding value to the universe and having just whatever my legacy is specifically. I want people to say, Kenyon Zitzka, I don't know where I would be without, his help. And I'm confident that I'm doing that, and what I'm doing now will only serve to add to that. And it's not that I want that to be like from an egotistical standpoint, but I really think that your success, it can be measured by the like, you want to be a force multiplier in the military. If you can make yourself obsolete, you can advance your own career. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are that person that's like hanging on to everything, that has all the corporate knowledge and make yourself indispensable, you're going to go nowhere. So I never want to be the person that hangs on to a secret. I want to share that with, I love sharing my knowledge. I love sharing what's worked, what hasn't worked for me with the universe. And at the end of the day, that's what I want my family to be. Someone that if someone reaches out for help, we can be counted on for help. And
I love what you're saying. And I've often repeated
Yeah.
that Steve Jobs says, to make a dent in the universe. And it reminded me of a colloquialism that I just created as you were talking, that if the universe was a wall and someone was walking by it and someone was like, what's that mark from? You want to be like, oh yeah, that's a Zitzka dent.
Yeah, exactly.
The Zitkas left that mark right there.
Exactly. Hopefully it's a beautiful gold, shines with gold, not like streak of the week style.
Yeah. I love that one. What advice would you give a dad looking to come home to their marriage?
Come home fully present, and I don't want to say lower your expectations, but if you can show up whole as a person yourself, you can handle anything. Whatever is waiting for you behind that front door of your house, if you take care of your body, mind, and soul, you can handle anything. And a lot of the stuff that we've seen as service members, what awaits us behind closed doors generally, or the front door of our homes, generally pales in comparison to some of the things we've seen. So,
is there a mistake that you would share with us from when you've come home, like maybe your 14-month deployment, to avoid other dads from walking into that pitfall?
We were pretty early on in our marriage. So we were when I came home, I was deployed longer than we had been married.
So you were almost still in the honeymoon. You kind of
so we were in this honeymoon phase. So it was like honeymoon all over. It was just, we picked up where we left off because we're still kind of in that honeymoon phase. And it was a honeymoon for 2 weeks after I got back. We just kind of kept that going. And I don't have any complaint. I really can't complain about.
Is that honeymoon where
anything.
Piper come from?
No. That's a whole. That was a bit of a struggle. We battled infertility and a number of things to get to where we're at today.
So you really had to come home even further and go through even more stuff, even in your marriage, because that's I haven't gone through it myself, but I've met people that had, and my sister had to go through it, and it's not easy. You have to grow into part of your marriage that a lot of people don't have to, and
and it can it's a rocky road because they're beyond the infertility, there we unfortunately lost a pregnancy along the way as well. So it's just, you really have to, and this is kind of where I think I've fallen short, is that we're taught in the military to suppress our emotions because on the battlefield, our emotions can get us killed. And I even struggle to this day with this, is being emotionally available for my wife. And and understanding that our perspective is different than our wives' perspectives. Our wives haven't had that experience. And that's not like to come across as demeaning or talking down. It's just we have to remember that the things that register on their radar, it may not register on our radar, but that doesn't make that doesn't invalidate their feelings. And I still am navigating this because I still make this mistake. Like they might get upset over something that we just deal with and move on. And we have to keep in mind that we've been deployed around the world. We've seen a lot of things that very few people have the chance to see. And it's not like we're privileged to see that, from fighting wars. Maybe we are, but we just simply have had different perspectives than our friends, our family, and our spouses. And we have to keep in mind that we need to be sensitive to what they may be experiencing, because like I said, they just simply have different perspectives than us, and we need to close that gap. And that's always going to be a work in progress. It's a work in progress for me and my wife at this point. And to just remember that you need to work through those trouble spots, and to just simply, I'm an engineer, so anytime we have trouble spots like that, I immediately want to jump into that problem solving,
yeah, troubleshoot.
I want to take action to fix
experiment,
issue,
trial, test.
Yeah, and sometimes we just need to be the sounding board. Sometimes we just need to listen. We need to sit down and listen. Keep our mouth shut and listen to our spouses. And I suck at that. And it's something that I'm working on constantly. And I need to shut my engineering brain down sometimes, because sometimes our friends and family don't want us to solve. There's not really a problem we need to solve. It's just we need to be there to validate their feelings, maybe. And even if we don't think, if our opinion is that's not a big deal, that doesn't make their opinion any less true for them, because what's true for them may not be true for us, and that's okay.
I love that advice. It's true on 1,000 different levels, and we get lost so much in that moment right there. They happen every day in our lives, in our marriage, in our family, and so much of that advice can be applied to so many different areas. What is a resource or a book you would recommend to other military veteran dads?
Man, I've been compiling a list of all the books that I've read, because that's another area that I've been trying to take a round turn on, is like I read books, but I don't necessarily extract some golden nuggets and actually apply them. So I've been starting to go through and go through the list of books that I've read and try to extract one golden nugget from each one. But I probably would say, like, my top book that I recommend to people is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And I would say this applies to military dads as well, because Napoleon Hill, he's in this book, he's supposedly interviewing the devil and extracting the devil's secrets on how he wields control over the human mind. And he refers to this practice of hypnotic rhythm and drifting. And when I read this book actually gave me some anxiety.
I haven't read it. I've heard it mentioned. I need to move it up my list.
Yeah, it's an awesome book, because it was written in the 1930s, and I think this book was ahead of its time, because
a lot of released until like 1995 or something. Like the family kept
2011,
even later. Like the family kept it a secret till then.
Yeah, but he talks about how the education system, religion, all these institutions, and I'm not trying to purport that there's some sort of conspiracy theory, but so many people, they don't decide. You get to decide what you believe, think, and feel. You can decide that for yourself. Media and so many, even I'm sitting here telling you, trying to influence you on how to think, act, and feel. Decide, take one nugget that really resonates with you today and apply it. not everything that I say is going to be applicable to everybody listening right now. So take the best, chuck the rest. And that's really what I extracted from this particular book.
The part I often hear repeated is the devil wins when you're lying on your deathbed and you meet the version of yourself that you could have become.
Yeah, absolutely. And
that part, when I read that part, it's going to hit me hard because I've heard it repeated so many times.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a game changer. Like, I remember when I first read it, like there was this section that I was like, I have to read this part to my wife because, she's not into the same type of books that I am. But I was like, wow, this really resonates with me. I just had to read it to her, and she's like, oh man, that's really interesting. Can you read me some more of this book? And I ended up reading this book out loud to my wife while we were sitting down on the porch for a little bit after we put my daughter to bed for a little while a couple years ago. So it's a real interesting read, and it's fiction. It reads like a fiction book. However, there's some real practical golden nuggets in there that you can apply and really change your, really get your mindset right. And another thing that this book taught me is that we do have control over our thoughts, and that sometimes our first thought isn't the most productive or even relevant thought. To maybe cast that first initial thought aside and rationally think about a situation, because that's the knee-jerk reaction effect there, that firstborn thought, and to really sit with your thoughts and become mindful of your thoughts. And that's really what drove home the point of getting into a meditation practice every day, is to be cognizant of your thoughts and to observe your thoughts and decide whether your thought is productive or not towards whatever situation you might be in.
I love that. And I've read, you're probably a fan of the Stoics as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I read the Daily Stoic every day too.
What you realize when you start following the Stoics is the human mind's been suffering from the same crap for 3,000 years. And if you read something from them, there's sometimes where you can't even tell whether it's 3,000 years old or whether it's a person that happened yesterday. Like literally the same just crap garbage that goes through our head of limiting beliefs, self-doubt, well before the internet, well before life was going to be complicated. The only thing you had to worry about was where your food was going to come from. Absolutely. We're still having the same crap thoughts.
Yeah. And another thing that surprised me is like the whole like commercialism pressures were very, very real back in those times too. Like, like, hey, you should buy this. Like, we need to consume. Oh, consumerism. That was the word I wanted to use instead, not commercialism. Consumerism was very relevant back then too.
What is a parting piece of advice you want to leave for dads? If you could wrap all your nuggets into one piece of advice.
Yeah, I guess it is to, and we really didn't talk much about excuses here, even though I host a show called Zero Xcuses. But one of the biggest things that I like to do is do exactly the opposite of what your excuses are trying to tell you to do. Like, for example, if you're a terrible public speaker, hey, you know what? Maybe I should start a podcast or start, blogging or start a video blog or whatever. So that was kind of part of why I started the podcast, was because, I wasn't comfortable getting up in front of people and speaking and putting my thoughts down in speaking my thoughts in a coherent manner. I was terrible at conveying my ideas, and I'm still not great at it by any means, but I'm vastly better than I am 2 years ago when I started the podcast. So, whatever that excuse that's bubbling in your mind to prevent you from taking that bold action, just do exactly the opposite of it. I mean, if you can't eliminate your excuses, you might as well use them to your advantage.
I'm a firm believer in letting your fear be a compass. That the more something scares you, that your brain is actually installing that fear and putting that as a gap between whatever you're afraid of. But that's actually just something that would be super amazing. So I often think that the more something scares you, the more something's amazing on the other side. And your brain is just literally putting this gap that's related to lions, tigers, and bears. but we don't have lions and tigers and bears, but our brain still puts these similar gaps in, just like they were lions and tigers and bear. And so even this podcast I started because I didn't believe what I had to say was worth it. And by starting a podcast, I'm weekly proving that what I have to say is worth it. And people are continuing to give me feedback that, hey, what you said really helped. And it's killing that limiting belief and eliminating that excuse, and continue to, although I haven't really given much thought of what the next excuse will be. Because right now I'm currently kind of working on my public speaking one, going to Toastmasters. I'm not sure what the next big excuse that I start running towards, or next fear mongering thing that I start running towards.
Get up on stage and start speaking. That's my next step.
Yeah, it's going to come. I did a 20 person thing in Vegas back in February. So that's the smallest, but it was a nice little opening one in the beginning.
Absolutely, man.
Well, Kenyon, this has been a great podcast. I really love the conversation that we had. And I know we brought some dads home in this conversation. Where can people follow you? Where's the easiest place if they want to connect with you?
Well, a couple places. I'm on Facebook. I think I'm the only Kenyon Zitzka on this planet, so there's no excuse for you not to. Yeah, no excuse for you not to find me. And if you do find another Kenyon Zitzka, you probably should introduce me to him, because
it's gonna be a magical day.
Yeah, could be a magical, maybe my doppelganger or whatever. Anyways, squirrel. No. The other place you can find me is my website, kenyonzitzka.com. And you can find the podcast there. I've got all my links to all my social media accounts. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. Also have if YouTube's more your style than a podcast, I've been publishing my podcast directly to YouTube as well. But if you want to subscribe to the podcast, just go to kenyonzitzka.com/iTunes. And if you're an iTunes person, you can just hit the subscribe button and also leave me a rating and review. And I'm also on pretty much everywhere that you can find podcasts. I'm on Spotify and all those big platforms as well. And that's everywhere people can find me.
Well, Kenyon, I really appreciate this episode, and I'm glad to have you as a friend now in my circle, and look forward to our future conversations.
Hell yeah, man. Been a pleasure.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. And thank you for listening to today's show, and I really hope you enjoyed it. The lifeblood of any new podcast are the reviews. If you haven't reviewed the podcast yet on iTunes, I would really appreciate it, and you will help us get the message out to even more military veteran dads. As John Maxwell says, if there is hope in the future, there is power in the present. Dads, it's time to come home.